Welcome to a Friday night edition, very special edition of Taking It to the Nub. I'm your host, Boston Jimmie, and tonight I've been wanting to do this show for quite some time, and finally I was able to get a panel together of industry representatives to talk about cigar pricing. And we're going to touch a lot of different topics along the way, a lot to cover. And we're going to get this show rolling in just a moment. What I want to do now is introduce the panel, and then we're going to get into the show. Let's start the introductions. I don't know what you see on your side, but we'll start on my side with Dave.
Well, thank you, Jimmie. I'm glad to be on the show. It's a great topic, and it's something that's really hitting home right now. 30 years in the industry, presently a retailer, spent time as a rep, distributor, manufacturer, worked in the management, and now I've got the 360 as a retailer to kind of see the whole vision of this industry. So that's where I'm at, and look forward to this topic. It's a good one.
Thank you. Go to Jonathon.
Jonathon Lipson, 20 years in the business, from retailer through director of marketing to senior brand manager, most recently with STG, now the founder and president of the Cigar Profit Consulting.
You? Enid?
I'm Enid Blanton. I am the CEO and owner of Ancestry Cigars, which is based in Chicago, Illinois. We are veteran owned, and I have been in the industry for 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Risty.
Risty Roseski, owner of Yasu Girl Cigars, coming on my 10th year, covering the world with cigars from day one.
Okay, and Jake.
Hey, Boston Jimmie, good to be back here again. Always good to see you. Been in the industry since about 1983. Madre, Tierra Cigars. We're manufactured out of Tamboril, Dominican Republic. And it's a great topic. Looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you. And Frank.
Frank from Figueroa Cigar Company. Been in the business for 19 years. Done everything from retail to distribution to brokering to now owning my own shop for the past 4 years.
Oh, fantastic. So we got a lot of experience in the room. Happy summer solstice. I guess this is the longest day of the year, so we can make it the longest show of the year. This could go on forever. So I guess I just want to start it off with, from myself, I've been smoking cigars for 41 years, 42 years. I don't know. It's a long time. And I've been running Stogie Press now since 2013. So that's a good 12 years. And I would say that I've saw prices escalate. I've seen these things happen over the years. But one of the things that really triggered in my mind a price escalation was in 2016 when the FDA came out with their deeming regulations, and they defined a premium cigar: long fill, hand rolled, no extra ingredients. Okay, and we kind of unpacked that. But then they put a price point of $10. Now, back in 2016, $10 was a pricey cigar on the shelf because you were getting $7, $8 cigars all day that were just fine. What is your guys' thoughts on that? Do you think that was a catalyst to where we are today? Because I don't see those prices never really pulled back. Or do you think that was just a blip and we're just business as usual now?
Well, excuse me. Jimmie, I think if you look at it, I think the HR 2339. They were talking about making cigars completely illegal to sell online. And what happened was, I think the number was a $12 stick at the time, or $12.50. And what I thought is we're going to start creeping. And if you think about it now, we've kind of creeped above that level. So if that ever does kick in, and maybe people know something we don't know, that they're prepared. Because if you look at the manufacturers, they're also, the internet companies, a lot of them. So, I think, in my opinion, I think that is part of it. If you chase it all up to that spot, everybody's eligible to sell online. So That's my little input on that.
Okay. Anybody else have a thought from a
That
regulation
was
standpoint?
like 4 months into my new company. When I started the company, I remember when the deeming rules started to come out, and I was already priced in around $10, $11, I think 12 max at that time. And I was directly to consumer. I was online at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one of the rules that came out that affected my company drastically was the marketing regulations that come out. They wanted to know for the rest of your life of your brand what you were going to do, and you had to show proof. So I at that point I was like maybe 6 months into my brand. I'm growing, but now I have to decide, what am I going to sell for the rest of my life? So I spent a lot of money on branding material that I still own, that I still haven't released at that time because obviously the rules changed since then. But I was following the regulations at the time because I do a lot of compliance with other industries I'm involved in. So I follow the rules, and it kind of got shitty because a lot of people didn't, and everything went away. So a brand like me who spent a lot of money up front to see the rules, fall through because FDA is FDA, and government does take a while to take an effect. But I know if it does take an effect, and if you're not compliant, you're off the shelf. So I don't know. I almost thought about leaving the industry at that time, but someone told me keep growing hay as long as the sun's
All
out.
right.
So
I think I got in now.
Oh, welcome,
Very good.
Alex. Alex, can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Alex Martinez, owner of Exile Cigars.
Thank you. How long have you owned your lounge?
We've been in business. We just celebrated our third anniversary back in April.
All
We
right.
have 3 core lines, and I'm also the owner of 2 of the LFD NFTs and the Anarchy NFTs. We have 2 of those too, the Eye and the Mask.
Nice.
So I'm the king of the NFTs.
All right. There we go. We got some crypto work going on.
That's it.
So
Can I just
let's,
add something to
yes.
Rista was saying? At that time, every single manufacturer was trying to just get all these different brand names set, all these blends together. Back to what you were saying, Jimmie. I think everybody was preparing to hit that, but with so many different blends that they now in their FDA approval portfolio, they could go either way. They could go up, down, sideways. So, I think it was a good point to say, all right, it's going to be $10, it's going to be $12, whatever that looks like. I'm prepared to go less, but hell, if everybody else is going more, I'm going to go more. My thought.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if you guys remember, that was the year of the ghost blends. Coop, I remember covered that. He's like, where are all these blends that are supposed to be releasing? Because everyone was making marketing releases for the PCA that year.
Yep.
So that was the year of the most cigars that were supposed to get released and never got released.
That's correct. I remember that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, to add to that,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember that PCA. I was with Cornelius and Anthony at the time, and we ghost blended, I think, 20 SKUs that show. And that was the year that we released the Gent and the Mistress at the same time for actual production. So a lot of people were preparing. Oh, yeah. A lot of people were preparing for 10 years out of survival when that was happening with the FDA.
So let's move into a really good topic on this. So when we talk pricing has a lot of parameters involved in why this costs what it does on the shelf. Everything from the basic cost of the cigar, packaging, marketing, advertising, taxes, state taxes, and the list can go on. I want to break this down a little bit. And so I'm going to talk to first brand owners for a second. What would you say the mean or average cost of producing the cigar at a factory, okay, without adding anything else into just the cost of the cigar itself? No taxes yet, okay, no marketing, boxing stuff yet on it, just the cost of producing the cigar. Where is that cost at?
I would have to say, Boston Jimmy, that cost is anywhere right about now. It's going to about out of my factory, probably about 575 to 675 a cigar.
So you're paying 575 to 6 right from the factory. That's your
Correct.
cost before you
Correct.
wholesale it and retail it.
Yes, correct.
How about anybody else?
Yeah, for us at Madre Tierra, we're probably right around anywhere between $3 to $6, depending on the tobacco quality, origin, and so on. That's roughly what our factory cost is. And we're pretty linear. We're a craft cigar company, so we don't have a lot of overhead. Or, we don't have any middlemen or anything like that.
Oh, we got to go on. We probably got to go on mute.
Can someone with the dog please go on mute?
Yeah, somebody, we got to go mute. So everybody, maybe just mute your phone and then unmute. All right, go ahead. I'm sorry, Jake.
But no, that's all right. But I was going to say, for us, I mean, the expense that we can't control is that ship cost. The state excise tax, and the federal taxes. That's really kind of what drives our cost of bringing, the cigars once they're manufactured in the United States.
Yeah,
so
we're not.
bringing them across the pond.
We're going to get
that's
into
the hardest part.
We're going to get into the excise tax and all that later. But just the cost of the cigar, just the cigar cost itself, you're paying in that range.
Yeah, like I said, it really depends on the blend and cure time and everything. But quality of the tobacco, it's usually anywhere between 3 to 6. Is what it costs for us anyway to manufacture this cigar.
Christy, what does it cost you to make a cigar?
I'm not going to publicly disclose exactly.
Man, we got a lot of noise in the background, so. I don't know if it's an echo.
Whoever's in the lounge.
It's a lot better.
Yeah, that went off now. Alex, you're in the lounge. You might be getting some noise in the background. All right, so Risty, what does it cost you to make a cigar?
I don't publicly state what I sell or what I buy my cigars at or what the factory pricing is, but I'm smoking a cigar. I sell $3 retail, ship to your door. So I don't know if that put perspective to you.
So $3 retail. Okay.
Correct.
So, anybody else want to chime in on a cigar cost from the factory?
I'm going to throw in the reality of some of these big boys, obviously, and you're looking at, and correct me, anybody out there if I'm wrong, about $1.20 to $1.70 landed on a premium cigar in the United States. If you're, an STG, an Altadis, or an Oliva, a grower, a vertically integrated, those guys are, and Jonathon, I think you have some insight on this also. When I was with McAuliffe, we put together that Grande Bold line through STG, and we had that same issue through the FDA. We had to get it all product that was prior to. So when you're looking at certain high-end wrappers we talked a little bit about earlier, Jimmie, top of the line Cameroon isn't pushing that much a pound, right, Risty, to a point where you need to bring the cigar up that level. So in reality, there's obviously costs involved with smaller runs for some of these companies that don't run these big batches, obviously, in all fairness to them. And they don't have the logistic ability to get it here, let's say, efficiently costing and importing and things. So their prices are driven up a little bit that way. And that's okay. It's a boutique brand. It's something that's a little smaller scale. But when you look at the bigger levels, you're talking about prices that, you're growing your own seedling, and you've been in the business for a long time with aged tobacco. So the cost of doing business, even with the rates going up for rollers and bunchers in Nicaragua, it's not going to change. It shouldn't have changed things the way it has in the last 2 years to drive prices up 30%. In all my time in the industry, I've never seen 2 price increases in Q1 and Q2. Right before the show, there was a price increase almost across the board on most companies. And then with the tariff release, now we have a secondary price list that just came out, and it's 80% of the companies we know every day. So, it's not targeting. It's just the reality is that when $12 and $14 cigars are popping up on the shelf, you're losing a large part of that market, and that's, you know, that's the key thing here, and those companies have control of that too. So that's just where I'm at, I think, with that whole situation, and in the importing side, you know, if you're bringing in small batch, you know, and you're going through a source, you obviously are it's a different way of going to market. So I'm talking more in terms of the larger scale companies.
Okay. Well, Jonathan, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely to scale as far as factory pricing. I don't need a C and D from my previous employers, so I can neither confirm nor deny any of this pricing. However, what I can say, the boutique manufacturers on this panel are relatively expensive when you take it larger companies who have scaled to such a point where they can buy more. That I can say. Back to Dave's point, yeah, I obviously agree with you there. And the other side of that coin is not only do you get those two price increases, the next day or 2 days later, you're going to get an email from those guys saying, okay, here's a closeout on this stuff. So
it's a
where's
great
the point of equilibrium?
SKUs.
Right.
It's, you know, that's when brands are starting to consolidate their SKUs into what's selling at that point, you know. And I will add, Dave, great point, and I will be that guy that will say these numbers. There are huge corporations that don't cost more than 15 cents to make a cigar.
Right.
You know, and that is a high-end cigar.
Right.
Let's be real here.
So we take
the prices vary extremely.
So if we continue the evolution of the price, right? So let's just say, okay, for the small batch team, the boutique guys, let's peg it at $4 on an average, okay? At the big guys, we're saying maybe $1.50, right, to make the cigar. Now, in the world of cigars, right, we have what we call keystoning. So before you even get there, you also got to pay for your S-chip, your use fee, and all that stuff through the.
You get your boxes, your cliches, your bands.
Well, we're not there yet. Let's not get to the boxes. Well, that's a special topic. I want to make that special. But let's just talk about the cigar now with the import cost on it, which is what, about 50 cents, somewhere in that range, all in.
So we talk all in, just a naked bundle of cigars landed in the United States. No box, no band, no nothing.
Yeah.
Landed cost, roughly, I had an estimate from a top 5 manufacturer to have my private blend made, and I was landed in the U.S. $380.
$380. Okay.
No boxes, no bands.
That's about right. That's about right. And the shipping weight of boxes and everything else will increase that.
Correct.
The biggest factor to that, Jimmie, that plays a variable every day is fuel cost. Your quote for logistics is only good for most places 24 hours, just based on fuel costs.
100%. That didn't include shipping.
Yeah.
Just the cost of the cigar plus federal S-chip in the United States landed to Miami, $380. Didn't include freight costs to get to me, quantity, anything like that. And that was a minimum run of 500 cigars.
Okay, so you're doing 500, you're doing 380.
That was minimum requirement.
Big guys, I'd venture to say they're closer to about $2 or so landed. Okay. And then if you keystone that, right? So now the keystone process, the formula in our industry is double, right? So basically what's going to happen is, forget about, state taxes for a second. Your $4 cigar becomes $16 on the shelf.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, MSRP, that's about right.
If you wholesale that for $8, it's going to be $16 retail.
I gotta interject. Coming from the brokering side, knowing numbers from companies, a lot of companies didn't keystone.
Correct. Frank's right on this, because
they wouldn't keystone. They would increase by 30%. So if it was a $4 cigar landed, they were only merely going to sell it for $6 to a retailer.
And the retailer is going to sell for
Keystone Plus from manufacturer to retailer.
Okay, and then the retailer sells for 12. If you go some of the bigger guys, they actually do the keystoning. So that $2 cigar is $4 is $8. okay, on the
Well,
shelf.
if it's landed here in the U.S. at 4 to the manufacturer, then the manufacturer would sell it to a retailer like me at 6. Then I would keystone to 12.
Yeah, that's you. That's for
Right.
those numbers.
Yeah.
The bigger companies, if they're landing somewhere in the $2 or so range, right? That's going to be double to $4, double to $8. So the benchmark here says be $8. Okay, between $8 and $12 on the shelf. Now we haven't included the rest of the story, right? So that's just if you just did naked bundle, right? Just cigars, not banded, not boxed or anything. Now you have to add the other parts to this. And when we talk boxes, right? So bands, what is so what does a band cost?
Most expensive band I've seen is like 15 cents for 1,000.
Right.
Your first run of bands is going to be your most expensive because they got to make.
Yeah, because you got to get the die.
After that, average price on a band can range from 2 cents to 3 cents once you start doing
Yep.
So the band doesn't add a lot to the cigar.
No.
Right.
Just I would consume it like cello. Cello is almost free. That's such a low price.
Well, if you take an effect, if you have an embossed band, multicolor, and double banded, and now we have foot bands, you start adding the cliche to the box, depending on the type of box you use, you're starting to get into, I've worked with paper boxes and I've worked with high-end 10-count boxes, and prices that I worked on them have been a few years ago. So I imagine, they haven't gone down, and they were pretty pricey at that point. And, if you're looking at a paper box, at a low end, $4 to $5, that's I'm talking major quantity. I'm looking at a large scale. And then you add in the little ancillary pieces to it. The cliche, how many ribbons are being used. There's a lot of labor, and even though it's inexpensive, that stuff all adds up. And you can't take into consideration the cellophane because, if you think about it, an average retail store sells about 5,000 cigars a month. That's 5,000 pieces of cellophane that it's got to have a value to it because that's in the costing. So when you start to add all these little pieces into it, if you look at a box at the low end, you're at $4 to $5. Now, Placencia, they make their own boxes. They have a factory. Oliva has General. So obviously there's a little bit of a better value there, but they're also making production in counts of 100,000, 50,000 and more. So when you look at, some of the box makers, if it's a simple box, you might be in the $6, $7 range, especially the small scale. Small scale is going to be paying at least $10 for a basic box because of the quantity. So, and I think I wasn't sure who mentioned it, but, the quantity levels change dramatically when you start adding, 50,000 sticks, 100,000 sticks, and then you also make a factory commitment. So, the factory wants to see that you're coming back next quarter with another 100,000 or so sticks to bring. So those price points change a lot, but when you add all those little things into it, it's pretty shocking how much it adds to the bottom line of that cigar. And all of the companies that I know of, and all of the, except for Fuente and, some of the general product, they have some margins at 38% instead of, what Keystone margin. But overall, the reality is that the brick and mortar has to make that Keystone margin along, and the catalog companies have a big nut to cover too. But a lot of what we're paying for is the fluff, and when I think about the 80s, and Jimmie, you're with me on this, it was El Credito, Ernesto in Miami selling bundles out of the front of the window. It was JR, being the closeout king and the value king, and people wanted a good cigar for a good value. And prior to that, it was mass market, Candelas and 10-cent cigars. So, in this premium world, we're really lucky to have such great cigars we have, but we're pricing them out of the market. And that's my concern.
Well, go into let's just go to that box story for a second, right? So let's just say your box is costing you $10, and you got
my most expensive box was $12.50 for a 13-count.
It's how much?
My $12.50 because it was just, inside cliche, the bottom cliche, the sides, piano finish, digitally printed. but my cheapest box was $4.50.
Okay, so let's take a $10 box, a $10 box
But
is the core.
Boston Jimmy, are you talking about cardboard boxes or are you
No,
talking
no,
about
no,
wood
no.
boxes?
We're probably talking about a nice wooden box. Okay,
Okay.
so let's just say you have that. It's $10 to the manufacturer,
Now, is that
right?
a count or a 20 count?
Let's say it's a 10 count box.
So that's $1 to every single cigar.
That's $1 to every cigar.
It brings it
And
to
Mhm.
$5.
it,
Now you
Exactly.
just increased your weight and your
well,
shipment,
yeah,
so
it
that it probably added
adds.
$1.15 to the cigar.
Well, let's just say it adds $1 to every cigar your
Mhm.
cost.
Mhm.
Now Keystone that it's $4 on the shelf.
Yep.
Mhm.
So it adds $4 to the price of the cigar because of the box. And when you're done, and I think Dave, you might have said this in a post somewhere I read, when you're finished smoking those 10 cigars out of that box, you have an empty $40 box in front of you.
Mhm.
And I don't know if a lot of
And
people realize that. Okay. So the question then becomes, how do you bring some of these prices down? Right. So, David made it clear, back in the 80s, we're dealing with bundles and stuff. Big name guys that we know today started their world in bundles.
Mhm.
Right. And
right.
why? Because they didn't have to pay for all of this. By the way, boxes add weight to the shipping,
Yep.
Yes,
which
sir. Thank
Yep.
you.
I was getting
Absolutely.
ready to say
Yeah.
that. That's
so
Yeah.
You're
all of
also
this
key
adds
you're also
in.
driver.
So
talking about a time when
if you
best
go to
chip was 5
bundles,
cents.
right? If you go to bundles, this is where we have what I call the lore, the allure of the industry is beautiful boxes, beautiful marketing, beautiful
Mhm.
advertising, very luxurious. This is a luxurious product, and no way would somebody want to buy a bundled cigar because it would be inferior to that one which is in a box that's beautiful. And therein lies, I think, part of our pricing problem. If
Mhm.
you could have a box of cigars, but if you made a beautiful display
Play.
shelf
Mhm.
for a retailer and just filled those up, those cigars might be $3 less that way. You want the
Mhm.
box,
But
you're going to pay for the box.
well, and if you think about it, if you were to do something like Quorum just did it with that QC Fresh Pack, it holds 20 cigars. It's reusable. Not only
Mhm.
can you use it for those 20 sticks, you travel, you could throw some more things in it, and you have a reusable product that makes sense. And it's a few bucks, especially at those levels of purchase. So that's an answer. All the boxes back in the day were, you can go back to cardboard if you do it right. Some of the
Mhm.
finest watches in the world come in beautiful cardboard boxes that don't have to be that elaborate. Most boxes, a Spanish cedar, I love all of the romantic things that it does for a cigar that spends 2 weeks in that box by the time it gets to the store on average, if it's a good seller. I think boxes are great for the ultra premium world when you're selling it and you're gifting something, or the price tag is at a certain level where people don't care what they're paying for the box. But the everyday guy that's smoking 3 to 5 cigars, and we all know them, and we know a lot more than that. The reality is, do they want to pay, $40 for every 10 cigars they smoke that they're going to throw away? And that's where I feel frustrated a little bit with how much, and they're getting more elaborate. And then, all these foot bands and these extra bands that are doing more damage to cigars,
Oh,
consumers are buying them and, they tear them to shreds. So those are things that I think we need to look at, save some money and bring the product to market. When people look at the band on a cigar, if you put it on a bag that's a nice presentation, they know what it is. And I always go back to the point that Padron, Fuente on their simpler stuff, Padron on their cigars, Cuban cigars, fairly simple Monte Cristo band, fairly simple Partagas bands. It wasn't that, I used to love the beauty of the cigar, and now we're wrapping it like a mummy in all these beautiful colors and things, but, you're taking away from the cigar itself. So, um, just a frustrating topic for me because I believe that it's scaring a lot of my consumers out of the business. If your average sales $8 in my shop and we sell 5,000 cigars a month, let's say on average, what does that mean? We sell a lot of $20 cigars that people are gifting, and the guys have the weekend treat. Manufacturers can't survive on a weekend treat. They just can't. The volume, the overhead. These are international billion-dollar companies. They're not going to rely on somebody going to pick up one cigar for $25 on Saturday or Friday, and come back in the shop. That's not realistic. And that's where the industry, in my opinion, needs to reconfigure this. After the boom we had in the '90s. Value is everything. And now we're back in a boom coming to an end, and value is everything again. More so because consumers have access to every little thing, you know. So we need to make a value a little bit better so that people can have their everyday consumption, and their $7 chuck is what I keep pointing out. You know, it's where we're at.
So let's hold on that. Let's hold on that for 1 second. I'm gonna throw out my sponsor advertisement now mid-show, about 4 minutes. If you got to take a break and do something, it's about 3.5, 4 minutes. When we come back, we'll dive back into this, and then I want to get into things like online. I want to talk about the latest announcements of the import levels going down and what that might mean and what that's kind of projecting. So we'll dig into some of that and see if pricing has anything to do with those. So with that, let me just share this out and give a shout out to my sponsors, for without them, this show is always a little harder to do.
Michael, try calling. Can you call him? No, nobody can. Yeah, a few minutes.
No. You can mute everybody. Just, I can mute Bill.
You mute me.
Was brought to you by Casa Cuevas Cigars. In the 19th century, Juan Cuevas, Spanish immigrant from Santander, began what was to be a family business which now spans 4 generations. Like others fortunate enough to live and work in Pinar del Rio province of Cuba, Juan commenced cultivating tobacco, turning it into a successful business. Years later, in the Ciabo Valley of the Dominican Republic, Luis Cuevas Sr., Juan Jr.'s son, carried on the family tradition of handcrafting fine cigars in the family's cigar factory, Tabacalera Las Lavas. Today, Luis Sr. is joined by his son Luis Jr. in the manufacturing and sale of premium long filler cigars. So check out Casa Cuevas Cigars at www.casacuevascigars.com and on their Instagram and Facebook channels.
Catelli Cigars is back. The past few years brought many questions and changes to the cigar industry. In the wake of all uncertainty, Catelli Cigars decided to take a break and try their hand in the retail side of cigars. With 2 shops under their belt, first Riverside Cigar Bar, and now the Catelli Cigar Lounge in Vero Beach, Florida, they are now more educated in the retail and the wholesale sides of the cigar business. During this time, they received many inquiries about their cigars returning to the market. Making the difficult decision to take a break from their brand was eased, knowing that when the time was right, Catelli would be back, and now they are. Catelli is excited to bring their first release, the Catelli Box Air, back to market. The Box Air, a rich box-pressed San Andreas Mexican Maduro with a Nicaraguan binder and filler, come in Box Air's 3 original sizes, Robusto, Toro, and Gordo. You can check out Catelli Cigars at catellicigars.com. And also check out their Facebook and Instagram pages.
Right. Thank you for the sponsorship. Let's get back to the panel. So I think, Enid, you were going to chime in on that last topic.
The
The two.
What I was gonna say is, speaking from a boutique brand, as far as pricing and everything, if you're with a person that actually takes the time to train you on the prices, your cigar should not be over $15. Speaking from a boutique brand. One thing I do with my lounges, I do cardboard boxes. And once they get their initial box, I just sell them basically bundles, so they don't have to keep on paying such a high price for the boxes. Because for one, again, I'm a boutique brand. I'm not the Fuentes, I'm not the Fernandez, I'm not the Caldwell. So it's kind of hard initially to get your cigars in the lounges as it is. So boutique brands, they really need to focus in on doing cardboard boxes, and also having a excellent price point so that people can come to you and continue to do business with you. And that was my take on it.
Fair points.
Yeah. If I could chime in, I want to piggyback on that as well, being a craft cigar manufacturer, keeping the price point. I mean, if you have a good product, I mean, it's going to sell itself. And I think, the cigar industry, it's always been very visual. We buy things with our eyes. You look at the seller's market. So the flashiness of the boxes and everything else, it's hard to compete with that. And all that does is drive the price up. And that price gets passed down to the consumer. Mm-hmm. So I think what John and I tried to do, I mean, we've been around the block a little bit, we've tried different things. And I couldn't agree with I don't remember the gentleman that said it before, they put, little ribbons on the foot of the cigar and everything else. And you see brand new, folks buying cigars for the first time, they just absolutely destroy the cigar. A lot of times they don't know smoke anymore because there's so much stuff they got to unwrap in the cigar just to get to the darn thing. So it's one of those things, keep it simple. If you have a good product, it's certainly going to sell itself, and I think we need to get back to that, and that'll help drive that cost of that cigar down. So I want to echo that. That was well spoken.
So I want to chit chat about the box real quick. So the box is a necessary evil, okay? Because of packaging wise. So Enid says that she does cardboard box and then she goes to bundles after that. A lot of manufacturers, and another gentleman mentioned going to trays to keep the cost down. As a retailer, trays are great and they're the kiss of death at the same time. And the reason being is the reason why the box is a necessary evil. Making a tray that's a 3-count tray to a 5-count tray is only maybe $3 to $4 more to cost to make than a $5 box. It may be $8 for a tray, maybe double the cost at 10, one-time $10 cost, and then you refill with the bundles. Herein lays the problem of the tray. If one of the SKUs in the manufacturers love trays to sell to retailers, the reason being is it's a bigger footprint to take away once you're in. Yes, 4 SKUs in a tray is the equivalent of 3 boxes of cigars. So you do get to save an extra box. But if one of those SKUs doesn't move and you want to change out that SKU, you need to discontinue the whole tray in order to bring something else in. So it makes their footprint in your humidor and on your shelf a little more permanent than a single box that isn't moving. Because you can pull that box, dump it into a bin at a discount bin, throw the box away or sell it to somebody for $2 for arts and craft. Now that SKU has been moved around where I can bring in Risty's SKU that I know is going to move in 90 days and not worry about something that's been sitting on my shelf for 4 months. So that's why the box is necessary.
Yeah, but the tray doesn't necessarily have to. The display can display your company logo, and each slot in the tray, instead of having the name of the cigar, you could have a cardboard placard right there that talks about it.
Correct. That's if
and then if that one doesn't sell, you take it out, you put a different one in.
Right, but manufacturers know that if you go to a tray, for example, you do a Romeo and Julieta tray, you're going to put Romeo and Julieta in there. You're not, but nobody's really mastered the art of the tray to make it versatile to where, okay, I don't want the Romeo Julieta Nicaraguan Toro in there. I want the Robusto, but right next to it, I want the 1875 Bully, which moves a lot for me. To be able to have a cross promotional blank Romeo Julieta tray that's not branded to one specific blend, manufacturers haven't mastered that art yet. And it's almost takes away from the boxes too. Some retailers have gone to blank tray systems across their hotels and refilled. And at that point, now your humidor isn't desirable. It's not shoppable. It's not inviting. It's plain. It's bland. And unfortunately, the people on this panel, we don't care about that stuff. But the consumer does. We care more about the cigar, the experience, the flavor profile. Most of the people want to be wowed, razzled, and dazzled with bands, with boxes, with ribbons to make sure that they feel that their eyes are doing the first dance. People shop with their eyes first. And that's where the manufacturers have mastered this art of allure with bands and all this flashy stuff. Because there's two types of people in this industry too. There are cigar smokers, which is everybody on this panel. And then there's people that smoke cigars.
Exactly.
People smoke once a week, maybe 3 times a month. And then there's us that smoke daily. So that's where manufacturers have mastered the art of the people that smoke once or twice a week. There's more of those people in the industry than there are cigar smokers. Population.
So I have like 10 minutes. I just want to say something on the tray. The tray is actually the kiss of death for a brand, because now, for example, my tyrannical buck box is actually 15 inches wide versus the standard 5.5. So now I got to convince a realtor to take up 15 inches on their shelf space, which is their bread moneymaker, ornate box, but I'm taking up 3 spots, and so a brand will be like, I tried the tray thing. The problem with the tray thing is, if you have a Lancero, now you got a 7-inch box or height of a tray. Some people don't want to pay the extra 15, 20 cents for that box for adjustable spacers. So now if you promote the whole line from, I have a cigar that's 5 inches to 7 inches, you got dead space inside the box. It's going to rattle around. You're going to end up with more broken sticks. Retailers are going to call you, hey, these fucked up in the shipment, or they're just sitting there. So the tray, in my opinion, is the kiss of death of a brand.
100%.
Because, and if you especially go, because here's the thing I notice every time I walk in a cigar shop, there's actually a third consumer. We are the main one. We are the 20% of the industry. You know what I'm saying? 80%, they just smoke whatever, once a week, whatever. But then you have that person that comes in, hey, Frank, what's new today? What's new this week? And if your shelf looks the exact same and you're doing generic trays, they're going to stop asking because it's not a desirable shop. So my question is, what do you tell the brands right now that have $100 coffee?
Right. Okay. Fair.
I can tell you, for us, we've had to go with skinnier boxes, right? Because that real estate is premium. And just getting into those brick and mortars, you have to compete with somebody like Perdomo that requires an entire, wall in order for you. So, we've had to kind of evolve, if you will, in order to make that space and get more blends in there to kind of fit all those different consumers, what you were just talking about. So that's just one way we've had to do it to kind of help also keep that cost down, right? Because again, you put a large box in there, you only fit so many in that large box and take so much space. So you actually get more product in by going vertically up on those shelves rather than wide.
100%. Instead of a 2-row of 10, you do 4-row of 5 vertical.
Exactly.
So that happened in
boxes are important.
7 years that people have gone vertical instead of wide.
All right.
There's also another reason for that from a marketer's standpoint. The height gives you much more room to advertise. When you're at a 10-10, you got a shelf lip and you can't see anything. And you got all these cigar museums where they bust off the top. What are you looking at now? And that's the same issue with a tray. Your cigars are flat on the shelf while everybody else has a box with a lid coming up. That's where branding comes in.
Especially if you use a normal standard tray across the board, no branding.
Right.
What I phased out all boxes. To me, boxes are just I can't tell you how many fire pits I started bonfires with my boxes. Uh, I would take a UPS shipping box and design my box with the maximum amount I can put in that box.
Smart.
You know, because just something like that would take away an extra 2 cents. But if you're doing 50, 60,000 boxes and you have packed them correctly, and it's more bang for your buck, because if you're importing less than 10,000 cigars, you're gonna get charged a 10,000 cigar kind of weight logistics. There's no, hey, I'm doing 500, 1,000, 2,000. If you're doing 1,000 boxes, you're gonna be, you know, or let's say 5,000 sticks, you're gonna be charged roughly for 10,000 stick like shipping. There's really no leeway, so it's like you gotta maximize and stretch that dollar as much as possible. But what happens is when you have these high companies that are doing, you know, 100,000 a month, 100,000 a week, whatever, just straight up shipping, and a boutique brand comes in a store and has a beautiful box, like very ornate, but will that beautiful box outsell that big brand, you know, who's in CA, who's online, who's, you know, like
So,
the, everyone hates Cigar Page, but all these online companies are actually doing
well, we're gonna get into
advertising.
that in a second, Risty. Okay.
I have like 5 minutes. I gotta go pick up my
All
son.
right.
If you guys are still on later, I'll jump back on.
Okay.
So
But well, I just want to remind everybody that the boxing and the banding and stuff. I mean, this isn't new to the industry. This goes back to the 19th century. Okay, we've had these
correct.
things, and I just want to read. I want to read, and when we talk about bundled cigars, that some people say, "Hey, bundles can't be premium." All right, it's not in a beautiful box. That's what you want. It's all this allure to it. I'm just going to read an excerpt for you. Okay. I was to have 12 personal friends to supper one night. One of them was a notorious costly and elegant cigars, as I was for cheap and devilish ones. I called at his house, and when no one was looking, I borrowed uh, a double handful of his very choicest cigars, which cost him 40 cents apiece and bore red and gold labels in the sign of their nobility. I removed the labels, put the cigars into a box with my favorite brand on it, a brand which those people all knew, which they cowed them as men are cowed by an epidemic. They took these cigars, went off it at the end of the supper, and lit them and sternly struggled with them. In dreary silence, the hilarity died when the fell brand came into view and started around. But their fortitude held for a short time only. Then they made excuses and filed out, treading on one another's heels with indecent eagerness. And in the morning, when I went to observe the results, the cigars lay all between the front door and the gate, all except one that lay in the plate of the man from whom I had cabbaged a lot. One of the two whiffs was all he could stand. He told me after that someday I would get shot for giving people that kind of cigar to smoke. Mark Twain, right? Famous quote, famous story. It's perception, right?
Yep.
We sell perception. This is a beautiful box. It must be a great cigar, and therefore I can charge you 15, 16, $18 for it. And again, a lot of that cost is in the box and the marketing and everything for it. So
And a lot
I
of
don't
it's
know
just
about
markup from
you.
there.
I'm on, I'm not going to say I smoke crappy, well, I do smoke crappy cigars, but I never review those crappy cigars because they shouldn't be in the business in my mind. But I have smoked $8 cigars within the last 2 years that'll stand up against $40 cigars. Okay. And I've smoked $40 cigars that I wouldn't give to my worst enemy. Okay. And that's the part that makes my head shake is that, okay, when is a cigar worth the price that it's on there? And supply and demand, it's limited edition. They're going to market it. People are going to buy it. And off we go to the races again and again. So what do you guys think is a reasonable price for a premium cigar that is just it's a fine cigar? Well, where do you think that mean is today on the shelf?
$10 to $15.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree about $15. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I was
And
gonna
there,
say.
I personally, in my store, I sell 20, 40, and I'm also mobile too with events. So we're the exclusive cigar manufacturer for and retailer for Barrett Jackson in Scottsdale. We also do Arizona Bike Week. My cigars at a mobile event. Prime example, my Davidoff Anniversario number 3, it's $40. That's only 30 in a store. So markup there. I personally don't like any cigar over $15. Just my palate. I just rarely do I think a cigar is worth $20. That I can find another one for 10 to 15 that I'm going to enjoy just as much as a $20 cigar. The blends out there of what manufacturers have been doing, yes, they're good, but do they warrant that price point? When we all know there's not that much variance growing, landing a really ornate blend than landing a regular blend. You know, this tobacco has been aged for 15 years compared to something that was seed to cigar 18 months. That landed cost is, like we said, $4, and a really, really aged rare tobacco format could be only $6. Okay, well, the double, does that really make it go from a $15 cigar to a $30 cigar? That $1 or $2 difference at the base price, it should only be a difference of $6. So my personal thing is manufacturers that are saying this is a wholesale cost at $15 for a cigar, that's just them slapping a price to something, thinking their cigar is the shit.
yeah, and we have companies. I mean, if you look at some of the most highly priced cigars outside of the Cubans that are out there, which are stupid right now. But if you look at some of the brands, okay, that everybody knows, high prices. Ashton has got some hefty prices. Davidoff obviously has some hefty prices. El Septimo has some extremely hefty prices on their cigars.
Yeah.
Valencia.
Graycliff has incredibly high prices.
Byron's.
Let's use a great example of a really expensive cigar that even the manufacturer said he did it to prove a fucking point. Steve Saka, I used to work for him, went out and he made the Unicorn.
Right.
He went out to make the most expensive cigar he could find. He used the rarest tobaccos, the most aged tobaccos, everything he could find to make this cigar super expensive. And his
but is it really super expensive? I mean, you're selling a story.
That's the thing.
If there's a 15-year-old wrapper on the market,
story
that means
was
it sucked
expensive.
15
No,
years
let him
ago.
finish the story. Let him finish the
Thing.
story.
Steve even says he tried to find the most expensive stuff to make this cigar to prove a point. And the most he could make that cigar was $100 retail cost. And that's including his markup and whatnot. So if we look at the fundamentals of the math of what a manufacturer would do at a 30% markup, that cigar landed cost might only be a $30 core cost.
What did that bring to the industry? The $150 cigar, the $175 cigar, the $125 cigar. Every brand jumped on that.
Right.
And that's just marketing and capitalism.
That cost to manufacture land is really at that $50 to $75 price point. So it's a matter of, I'm making a cigar. Okay, great. My core cost is $3, where I'm gonna wholesale it for $10 because I want to be in the $20 price point, because that's where I want to be. And that's an ego from a manufacturer.
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't talk about. We didn't factor in the ego price.
Say again, Risty?
That's one thing we didn't factor in the beginning as far as imported landed. We forgot the factor of the ego. The guy who's wearing the $20,000 watch or $50,000 pair of shoes, you know what I'm saying? Versus, me, I got a Walmart pair of shoes on I paid $20 for it. You know what I'm saying? So we forgot the factor of the ego in and the branding, the story. Listen, my cigars are $3 to your door. They used to be 10. In 10 years, I've actually decreased my prices twice. I'm the only brand that's never had a price increase in 10 years since I've been started. I just got tired of hearing the same bullshit stick from every other brand or a new brand or whatever. I got this Age Tobacco 10-year wrapper, 4-year binder, 5-year filler. I'm a firm believer if you have a 10-year wrapper, you
It's
got sold
dry
a
as
wrapper
hell.
that sucked 10 years
Yep.
ago.
Yep. I agree.
So
I
uh,
agree.
I changed my pricing point because someone very high up in the industry during COVID time told me this. He goes, Risty, what's going to happen in the next few years is because COVID, fertilizer prices are going up. A lot of
Hmm.
farmers are not buying the fertilizer they used to be using. So we're going to have to switch to very high ornate boxes. And you can look at the timeline of COVID and now. Super
Hmm.
nice boxes came out that price or at that time. And he said, you're going to have to make a very super cool looking box to sell a shitty cigar.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
I
what
think that's
happened.
the
From
that's
a
the
retailer
dynamic that we get
perspective,
involved in.
let me ask the retailing side of this. So, as a
I gotta go.
retailer,
I'll be back if you guys are still on in like an hour or
yeah,
so.
well, yeah, do your thing, Risty. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Yep.
So, from a retailer perspective, would you rather sell a $20 cigar or a $10 cigar?
Uh, as a volume point of view, if I'm a high end bar like Blend or Rocky, Burn, and I have the audience to sell, if I'm in Manhattan, we're in a community that has a lot of money. It's a vacation community, so you have a lot of lake houses, you have a lot of golfing, you have a lot of boating. The people here have all the money in the world, but they're, again, I think of, Davidoff, and you look at the top shelf Padrones and all the top shelf Plasencia across the board. I have guys that buy them every day. We sell them, but we don't sell them to the quantity and level it takes a manufacturer in this industry to survive. Coming from that side of the world and seeing a lot of what I saw, there is so much that, just to put a sales rep, one on the street, you've got so much involved there, and the volume is everything. This is a consumable product, and I go back to it all the time. It's a fast moving consumable good. If it isn't, you're dead in the water. If you're a small boutique company and you can make 10,000 cigars a year and make a living, that's awesome and that's great and that could work. But the reality of a cigar maker, my first opportunity to do that was $1.5 million for a line, and that's one run, and that's up front. It's not something that you could go to market on and look at it as a level of, how many guys can make 50? You got this boutique name of, I make X amount of cigars per year, and it's used differently in our industry. It's a different way to talk about it, but if a small cigar maker can make enough cigars to run their business and have it as a little extra, that's a great thing. And I recommend that to anybody that wants to get into small scale. But we're looking at, again, to survive, how many sticks do you have to move in a retail setting? If you're in a retail shop, I'm going to use a $500,000 shop. If you do the math, at $10 a stick is 50,000, right? A month. So if your volume is that, all it does is take some time to look at your categories. People will be surprised that you're going to have a Java, a Fat Bottom Betty, or a tobacco in those categories. You'd be a fool. My top selling cigars are Rojas bundles. They're $7 and $8 cigars, and I sell a lot of high-end Fuente. I sell Dunbarton. I've got everything in that $25 to $30 category and up. But the reality is that we as everyday guys, Risty hit it. There is another part of the market, but we as retailers sitting in the store 10 to 12 hours a day, we can't rely on that as an income. We have to have movement. And I use that Ferrari analogy. If I'm selling Ferraris and the sales rep's selling Ferraris, they're going to get 2 checks a year. If we're selling mass volume, we can stay in existence and we can build a company. You don't need a lot of employees. La Flor Dominicana, small scale, makes good money, doesn't need to expand anymore. Their prices have held pretty well. With the exception of the Bull, I think they've held pretty well. And I look across the board. Fuente, for the most part, has held pretty well. Padron, the 1,000 series are creeping up a bit. But overall, if somebody's going to say to me, want a 26 to 64 of this new cigar, why would I spend $30 to $40 of my hard-earned money to take a chance on something that, if it's a Saka, it's a little bit different. There's history there. He's got a cult following, so a lot of that drive and his smart marketing is a big piece of it. But, the
I'm on the
everyday guy.
same. I'm on that same page. When you mentioned, picking a choice when you go into a shop, like when I go into a shop, my local shop to buy cigars, I get, like I said early, I get a 25% discount because it's like $75 a year. I get 25% off all accessories and cigars. All right. So when I go there, I'm buying a 1926 Padron. Because I'm getting 25% off, which is a tremendous deal, right? And I'm not looking at other cigars that are anywhere near that price because I love that cigar. That cigar has never treated me bad. It's been consistent. Every time I smoked it, it's solid all the way through, right? It's the reason why I never reviewed it because I don't have to talk about Padron. Everybody knows Padron, right? So you get these choices on where you're going to spend your money, and I just want to shift the topic slightly to this latest news that Cigar Aficionado covered and other big media outlets where they were talking about the imports. Okay, so during COVID, we saw the numbers start to we were up at like 450, almost 475 million cigars, I believe, that was peaked out at. And there was a lot of people got into cigar smoking during COVID because their friends were into cigars and they got on these Zoom things because they weren't leaving their house. And next thing you know, they're smoking cigars together and having a good time and drinking and talking just like they were hanging out. And it drove the market. We're one of the industries that really did it right, okay, when it comes to what happened in COVID. But if you look at it, the last 2 years, it's kind of dipped down. And the first 2 months of this year, the report says the numbers are down like 9%, okay, on the imports. Now, that's just a small number of the whole year. But my question is, what do you think might be causing that? Is it because people are getting out, people that were going into it during COVID, now they're like, I don't need to do this no more, and it's costing me money that I don't need to be spending, and we're back to normal? Or is it a cost price increase? They're starting to see costs go up, and they can't afford as many, so they're buying less.
It's a
All
couple.
right.
So first, during COVID, you had your people that smoke cigars. They're at home. They're bored. They're a once a week smoker. Now they're working from home and they're not in an office, so they can smoke and work at the same time. So that's what drove up a lot more people smoking at home. People who were the fairy weather smokers, now they're more consistent. You made a good point also that there's Zoom calls, there's interaction with people. The lounges were now closed where the normal cigar smoker would go for interaction. So the people who would just go in, smoke one a week, relaxing time, now started branching out and meeting new people via the internet and whatnot. So that's what drove up more people smoking during COVID, okay, which was another boom. During and after COVID, we went into a recession. Cigars are recession proof, okay? Just like alcohol is recession proof. People aren't going to smoke the $20 cigars during a recession. They're going to mind their budget. They're still going to smoke the same amount of cigars, 4 cigars a week, if you will, but they're not going to smoke $20 cigars. They're going to drop down to 10. Same thing like alcohol. If somebody's a vodka drinker and they're a everyday martini, which they make with Grey Goose, during a recession, they're not going to buy Grey Goose. They're going to buy Smirnoff. And so that's what's gone on, where the people are still smoking. They're just smoking less and less, lower end stuff. And so therefore they're gravitating back to the heritage brand manufacturers that keep their price points in the $9 to $10 because they can mass produce. So people are straying away from 2 types of cigars that are out there. One, you have the boutique manufacturers, okay? And I'm sorry that Risty's not on here because I don't consider Risty a boutique manufactured. I consider Saka boutique, Black Label boutique. Even Tatuaje could still be considered a boutique brand on the larger scale. But Risty, I consider to be craft. Just like in beer, you have your boutique beer companies that are out there, but you have your craft guys that are only available locally. I mean, Enid, you have some beer companies that are out in Chicago that are only in the Illinois state area.
Correct.
Right. So that's a craft beer company. That's not a boutique beer company. So you have those manufacturers that are having a tougher time importing because the supply and the demand on those cigars, people are gravitating back to the heritage brands, back to something that's more budget friendly and something that they know that's consistent. The Perdomos have seen an increase in varietals and stuff like that. And you mentioned another box that is my number one selling cigar is the Fat Bottom Betty. I can't keep that shit in stock. I probably go through 25 boxes of the Robusto and the Toro a month. But my demographic also is golfers and bikers and car enthusiasts. Those guys tend to smoke the flavored or infused stuff. And you asked, would you rather sell a $10 cigar or a $20 cigar? If it's a one-time purchase, hands down, I want to sell a $20 cigar. But if it's an ongoing regular customer, I'd rather have them buy the $10 cigar because after their second cigar, I know that it's more profit. And that's why you want to, when somebody asks you for that recommendation, like Risty said, hey, Frank, what's new? What's exciting? You as a retailer, we need to remember our customers' palates and be able to suggest something to them because you get one fuck up when you're referring a cigar to a consumer, and then they won't ever ask you for your advice again. They'll forget one time. That's it.
But we have the responsibility too to not, it's hard for me to direct somebody to a $25 cigar. A wife's coming in for a gift. I want to make impact with something that's really good quality without making it feel like I took advantage of the customer. 100%. So those things too.
It's just like in sales, you have to qualify your customer when they're
got to know their wallet.
Right. Yeah. What are you looking to smoke? Do you like light, medium, full? And then, okay, great. In the budget? Medium range, what's going to be your price point? How much are you looking to spend today? Is this a special gift or is this a regular cigar? So they tell you your budget. So you steer them for the 10 or 15 based on what they tell you.
So we have gift packs out there, and if you look at a lot of the gift packs, a lot of them are well over $100 in today's world. If somebody's coming in to buy a gift for somebody, they ask me for a box of cigars, and I look at them. Let's say it's just a 10-count box of something decent. That's almost $200. It's to the point where most customers come in. Our average ring is about $48 a customer. If you get somebody in there it becomes overwhelming. That's why I also like 10-count boxes, because if it is $10, somebody's at that $100 range. What's happening is the guys that were spending those 25-count boxes that are $12-15 a stick, they start pushing it up there. The guys aren't buying the whole box anymore. I'm seeing it, and I think
you bring that's an important point that we didn't talk about is the box count. I don't know about you, but I know when I look at shelves over the last 5 years, I've seen it go from 25 to 20 to 15 to 10. There's even now companies selling just five count boxes, 7-count boxes because of that exact reason. It's the sticker shock of I'm not spending $300 for a box of cigars. Sure. My wife will kill me. But I'll spend $150 for a box of cigars because they can afford that. They're getting half the amount of cigars, but they're willing to spend $150.
Right. And if manufacturers were smart, they wouldn't go to a 1 row of 10. They would go to a 2 row 5 box.
Well, I've seen Jonathan hit it on the head.
A 7-count or a 5-count box packed.
Well, and the confusion of the consumer, you have 21 count, 27 count, 24 count, 25, 10, 15, 16, 17. Back in the day, we had a uniform system. You probably had some 10s, you had a lot of 25s and 20s. And we've just created this, illusion of, again, what's the creative side to all of that?
It annoys the shit out of me as a retailer when I have a manufacturer that's got 20 counts, then they've got 25s. I can deal with that. Like Altadis has 20s and 25s, but then you got my father that's got 23, 21,
Yeah.
20.
So Frank,
What the hell's the point?
Frank, you're not at the shop one day and you have your manager or somebody helping you there that day, and they look at a box of cigars and there's 27 and they charge for 20 or 20. I mean, it's become so difficult for the average guy, right?
Or two.
Yeah. Yeah. I made the mistakes a couple times, you know,
Oh,
and
yeah.
one count. You know, but
So I'm a manufacturer. I got to ask a question to the retail guys. I mean, what do you guys think about the Huma bags and like the 5-count tins that are coming out now and things of that nature? How does that? I mean, I want to know your take on those.
With my mobile events, I'm a huge proponent of tins and packs. Yeah. Because they'll look at a blondie at a $9, $10 cost, and then they'll look at a Sweet Jane at $12 to $13, but they'll look at the pack at $26 for 10 cigarillos, and they're like, wow, I'm getting a bigger bang for my buck, and I can smoke more often as I'm walking around, or it's a quick bar hopper cigar from one bar to the other where I'm out on my bike, and it's easier to pack, and it's in a hard case, and I won't crush it. Yeah. So they love that.
Yeah, and they get a little keepsake, right? You know, so.
Well, the fresh packs, you know, the fresh packs are nice because it allows somebody to grab and go something that, you know, whether it's a variety pack to try the whole line or if it's something that they really like and they can grab and go for the hunter, the fisherman, the traveler, they make a lot of sense. And they do add a little bit of the budget, you know. So if the guy loves that cigar, he's going to grab that pack just because it's convenient and he's saving a few bucks.
What I really like about those fresh packs too is the variety that manufacturers are doing with them. Case in point, Perdomo 10th anniversary, it's a great starter kit for beginning smokers also, because you've got the champagne, you've got the Maduro, you've got the sun-grown, you've got the different levels of the light, medium, and full in that pack, and they can decide where their palate is right in the beginning of what they kind of want to smoke. That's why I love the fresh packs.
Well, let me just jump in on there on that one.
Buy more of them.
I mean, the conversion rate, because, you know, I worked for a brand where we did that. Second highest selling SKU, dollar for dollar. Huge revenue generator. The thought process originally was, okay, we're going to give you this variety pack here, and you're going to try our line, and we're going to convert you into at least one of these sticks into a box, into a handful of them. That wasn't it. A pack buyer is a pack buyer. Yep. Is a pack buyer. They don't care what's in it. Value. Those are value-driven buyers. So, you know, Jake, I enjoyed your question. You are, a boutique manufacturer. If that's something you're looking at, there's a difference between a fresh pack value walking out the door and a gift pack. So if you're talking about, protecting brand equity, really something you need to think about. I also want to just jump in really quick and just say, I think overall as a society and specific to the premium cigar industry, brand makers, especially the bigger guys, they're at a race to the top right now, which gives a lot of people the ability to fill this huge gap at that rear, where I think we all here have already agreed upon. We can get to that $7 cigar. We can get to that $10 cigar. But everybody now just wants to elevate, 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 and they're leaving the middle class guy and your everyday smoker right behind. I think that's what we're trying to figure out. How do we protect guys that smoke 4 or 5 cigars a day?
Think about Jonathon Drew when he got into the game. There weren't a lot of all of these cigars on the market, right? People were smoking premium cigar was Davidoff, right? And he gets in and he suddenly opens the door to the blue collar world and says, I can give you a cigar that's quality cigar at a much lower price. And oh, by the way, I don't care if you're wearing a 3-piece suit or you're wearing a pair of jean shorts and a ripped t-shirt. It doesn't matter. You could, even Tatawahi, their original, they weren't expensive. You can walk around with tats on you all day long. They transform that in, they're transformers in the industry. And we have to remember that there's a whole lot more of these blue collar cigar smokers that have a limited budget, right? You see these posts. You see these posts of people going, I bought all of these, how do I tell my wife, or the jokes and the memes about, I better not tell my wife I just bought cigars because now she's going to go out and buy like, all kinds of crazy stuff on her side and, all the expense. But it's reality. You have, especially if you're living paycheck to paycheck or just above paycheck to paycheck, you got a little bit of discretionary income and you're going to enjoy something. You're going to enjoy this, you're going to enjoy your spirits, or you're going to enjoy your beer, or you're going to enjoy going, whatever it is you choose. But if you're choosing cigars, you're going to want to enjoy cigars.
Well, Jimmie, you got the younger people that also came in part of every boom. And when you have a 28-year-old, a husband or wife that's getting into cigars, I just had one the other day on LinkedIn. He goes, I can afford $3 to $5 a day. That's the reality, and he's going to be the future. He's a vice president of sales. He's probably going to grow into make some good money someday, but that's his window, And again, these guys that smoke an everyday stick, 3 to 5 to 7 a day, they're out there all. We've seen them all. If you've been in this industry, you know who they are. We know them very well, and to do the math, I don't need to say what 10 times 10 is a day times 30. So. And you hit it, Jimmie, with when I went to CI festivals, there was 1,100 guys there. They were blue collar. They were having a blast. It wasn't the stuffy country clubs that originally, when I first got in the business, it was ultra high end, and I felt uncomfortable a lot of times because I didn't fit that role. And when you look at it now, there's a lot of that. Go ahead, Jonathon.
Yeah. To your point, there's no stair stepping anymore. There's no Chevrolet, Buick, Oldsmobile, Cadillac. There's none of that.
There you go.
You're starting at Cadillac and you're going up to Rolls Royce.
Right. Excellent. Yeah.
And
I remember when Rocky Patel. I remember when he came out with the Edge. All right. I loved the Edge. I would buy lots of them. And especially the Sumatra. That was my favorite one, right?
$3.99.
It was like $3.99, $4 for those cigars. They're $8 cigars right now.
Yeah, or more, Jimmie, or
escalated, or more. They've escalated up pretty high. And I'm like going, it's what drove that price?
Well, let's look at a boom when you're saying that that smoker that's a vice president of a sales company, right? His budget's like $3 to $5. Well, let's pull back 4 years ago. What manufacturer ruffled a lot of people's feathers with what we're talking about? No boxes. The band was just a piece of paper, and the price point was $4 a stick, $5 a stick. Drew Estate factory smokes.
Absolutely.
They shook up even
tectonic shift.
They even shook up Cuban rounds, Cuban rejects, all the low price guys that were like, great, we're in this $5 to $7 price point. We're good to go because Rocky, his Edge, had shifted up to that $8 price point. And so these Cuban rounds, Cuban rejects that are Cuban sandwiches, short-filled cigars, were in the $7 range in a tray format, no less. And now Drew Estate comes in with a bundle. And as a retailer, it was so friendly because guess what? I didn't have to put it on the damn shelf. I put it up top in the storage and just faced it. And people would walk in and be like, hey, you got your factory smokes? Yeah, which one do you want? Boom. And it's there.
And I know I buy them like crazy, especially when I go golfing, because I don't want the people I golf with wasting the cigars that I bring. So I totally agree with that.
Oh, that's 100% true. Also, I, as a golfer myself, I'm in the second mecca of golf in the United States in Arizona. I mean, I can't throw a rock and not hit a damn golf course. And I have 12 of them in 5 miles from my house. But my shop is actually on the back of a 7th hole of a golf course. Like we walk out.
You don't have gators. You don't have gators there, like we have.
No, we don't. We have scorpions and rattlesnakes. So if your ball goes in the rough,
mobile hazard.
Get it. But when you go golfing here in the weather, now our humidity and everything and our lack thereof dictates what cigar I'm going to smoke on the golf course because one, I'm going to leave it on a hole behind me. It's going to dry out so damn fast that my wrapper is going to crack and I'm not going to enjoy it. I'm constantly picking it up, putting it down, picking it up, putting it down. So I'm not going to spend that $15 price point on a cigar. I'm going to spend 7 to 10 of a cigar that I really don't care if I break it after the third hole. Great, I'll just fire up another one.
But those are the everyday cigars. These are the cigars that guys are fishing with, golfing with. They're not, if you're going on that special evening, that $20 cigar is great on Saturday night on a date. But these guys, 3 to 4 or 5, and ladies too, you have people that are consuming this. Again, we got to go back to consumption because that's the whole name of this game,
And what was it called? It was called the Yard Guard, is what people called them.
Yeah, right.
That's why 5 Vegas Gold Series back in the day sold so well because it was $4 that you got online, which brings you to the online part. But it was so cheap, delivered right to your house.
And while you do, let's segue to that because the show's moving along. So that was really one of my last topics before we kind of wrap up a little bit. So online blew up pandemic wise. Okay. It really started to take off because people either if they had a shop that had door delivery, they were smart shops were smart, but in the end people found out they can go here and get this and get that. And then you introduce things like Cigar Page, right? Which Cigar Page is just, all right, I'm just going to say it's insanely priced cigars, cheap, right? I mean, I would pick up a box. I picked up a box of Southern Draw Cuzos. Southern Draw Cuzos for $60 on one of their flash sales. How do you turn that
down? That's a count box, correct?
That's a 20 count box. How do you turn that down?
I can't.
Right? Especially, you cannot turn that down. And you get a guy like Risty.
You got it at $3 a stick.
Yeah, so Risty, he goes and decided to pull completely out of the retail market. I talked to him about this, and this is nothing that he won't tell you, right? He pulled out of the retail market for multiple reasons, right? He told me, one of the problems he had was you got to go and you got all these retail. He had a lot of retailers, and you go to the retailer, they want 30 days. The 30 days became 90 days. The 90 days became, it just kept going up. So he was chasing money. And when you're chasing money as a brand owner, you don't have cash flow to start your process for the next batch.
Correct.
Okay?
And there's two types of people. There's a slow pay and there's a no pay.
Yeah.
Amen.
Right. And that's what he was saying. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, great. Now we want you to, and then this is another thing about this industry, which is one of the few industries that does this. Oh, by the way, I bring your line in. Now, when are you going to come here and help sell these cigars? Right. So now you want to bring the guy in, you want to do an event, so the brand owner now has to go and travel, pay for travel, hotel, an airplane or a car, gas, everything. That's all adding into his cost of doing business, which adds into your prices of cigars, right? And then he finally realized, he had one guy actually tell him, look, I'm going to bring your cigars in, but XYZ brand, they're giving me 30% off. And he goes, you know what? Close the account. And that's when he closed all his accounts. And he partnered with Cigar Page. And he produced the same cigar that I gave a really nice rating to, okay? And I've reviewed a lot of them. I haven't tried all of the ones that he has now on Cigar Page or the same old ones. But that Tyrannical Buck, okay? I bought those for $3. That's an $11.50 cigar back in 2019. Okay, $3 plus my sales tax delivered to my door. Okay, and I'm just like, okay. So now, how do you handle that? So when we talk pricing, right? Everybody gets up. Retailers get upset with online guys. They're saying, oh my God, because we all know the story. We got consumers that go into a brick and mortar, smoke a cigar, they love it, they go online, they go find it for 40% off, and they buy a box instead of buying it from the retailer. Okay, because they got a wallet that's only so big, right? So everybody, so you get this battle that goes back and forth. And in the end, it's up to the consumer what they want to go do. And you have to think about, if you have a limited budget, how you gonna spend your money? Going back to the blue collar guys, how you gonna spend your money?
Well, but a lot
So,
of, the social piece of the cigar shop, Jimmy, in today's world, when we were younger, we could go smoke anywhere. You look at some of the communities we're in now, you look at Mexico, you can't smoke anywhere in a public place. So, the one thing as a brick and mortar, the value to it is that I'm the only place legally to go inside and have a cigar when it's 105 degrees out.
exactly.
And if you want those outlets to exist, there's a cost of doing business to it. I give free water away, I give free coffee away, I give up space, and
Electricity, bathroom.
and it's a value. But it gives somebody a social outlet. It gives people somewhere to go. It's more than just a cigar shop. I tell people I don't really sell cigars. We're a social environment, and it's an escape. I've got guys that come in with their computers that study, that come in and do work, and that also business network. It's so much more than just what you can do online. And my guys tell me I found this online, Cigar Bid, and I could find this for
But see, that's
in
not
all
my
reality.
But
Yeah,
that wasn't my point. My point is, and I totally agree with you, that brick and mortars provide a service that you're not going to get just sitting around the house. My point is that, and you guys tell me, if you're a brand, now Risty is pure direct to consumer. That's it, done. He don't care. Okay, he ain't dealing with shops. That's a choice he made from a business perspective, and I applaud him. He does that's his thing. All right, but if you're a brand and you're selling to shops and you're selling through Cigar Page or one of these others, and you can get those cigars almost at a point that is wholesale value, all right? Is that not a disservice to the shop, okay, that your accounts are in general? Why? And if you can sell that, if you can do that, then why are you not just pricing your cigars equivalent to that, wholesaled, keystoned at the shop?
So
That's
speaking
what that's
speaking
what lights
of
me up.
retailer and also as an online retailer too.
Yeah.
So my online site, all of my stuff is marked at a 20% discount, which is standard from the manufacturer. So if I buy it for 5, I would retail it for 10. My online store has it for 8. Okay.
the penny tax advantage in Texas, like Pennsylvania and Florida. So I can compete. My prices, I try to price my single sticks as what CI prices their full box for, to show some, to my customers how fair we are. Obviously you can't stop those backdoor coupons and everything else, but I don't work on a keystone margin either, because I just believe I've got to turn product.
But
There's certain things you can
online
work on.
sites, but are the on so I guess here's the question, and Risty may know better than all of us,
What's
right?
up?
Is the on are the on when so when I go and look at a brand that costs $180 and I could buy it for 60 for a flash sale on Cigar Page or whatever. Did the brands are they selling that to Cigar Page for the same price that they're selling it to a brick and mortar, or are they selling it for less to Cigar Page? And if they're selling it for less, then why don't you just sell it for less to everybody?
So manufacturers selling, speaking broker wise, when I used to represent manufacturers, I had some major online retailers that were my clients. I have 2 here in Arizona, 3 that are here in Arizona that are massive. So I have Cigar King, Fox Cigar Company, and I have Cigars Daily that were my clients. Mm-hmm. So because of the sheer volume that they would purchase in, they would get a discount.
Correct.
From the manufacturer.
And then
yeah, I would echo the same thing that Frank said. It really comes down to volume, right? I mean, if they're buying a lot more, you can obviously lower the price.
And then
So
what the
every year,
consumers also
every year,
realize, the big picture also is if you look at the major online sites that are really the ones driving the online business, which is Cigars International, CBID, Thompson's, JR's, those major online retailers, who are they owned by? They're owned by the manufacturers directly. General, Altadis own those directly. So, okay, it costs me $4 to land that cigar here in the United States with
if
a
you look
box.
at
I'm just going to sell it for $5 and make a 20% margin and sell it direct to the consumer.
every year at the TAA meeting, there's some of the biggest retailers in the country at that meeting. At that meeting, those guys get a 30% off deal when they do their magic. And what happens is every retailer there has an opportunity to buy into the deal from every manufacturer. And I've been there a few times. It sells out of every manufacturer at 30% off. Whether it's, I don't want to say brands, it doesn't matter. But all the big guys are there, and everybody gets that 30% off because accumulatively they buy enough product. And when you're the monsters, they're so if I'm coming in, we've all seen those deals on Milanios or whatever it may be sometimes on those backdoor sneaks that these guys throw out there that are against their price agreements, but they have other ways to get them out there. They could give me a gift card for $100. I've seen it all over the years. And it's the catalogs are if you look at a manufacturer and ask any sales rep in the industry who their competition is, it isn't the other manufacturers, it's their own company in the catalogs. Because especially if you're in a high tax state, like I'm from Chicago, it's 36% now and it's going up. So what do? If the prices are $15 and you're in Utah and you're adding 86% to the cost of a cigar, there's a lot of variables that play in part, and you're not in a level playing field when the catalogs could ship out of state. Some do without sales tax, which I'm not to police the industry, but if you're shipping into a state that's 40% sales or tobacco tax, I think you have an obligation. How does the retail brick and mortar that's in state paying sales tax compete with a guy that's not paying either one? And again, I came from the manufacturing side, but I'm looking at it now as a retail perspective. You mentioned, I always brought up the Foot Locker in the mall with Nike across the street or across the hall. How often does it feel as a retailer with CI down the street, Casa di Monte Cristo, JR, do they want to have the brick and mortars? Do they want it all? Do they want to go to distribution? What's the question? Where's the industry headed if, the small communities could suffice a shop if they have the population to hold up to it. But if there's any volume in your community, you're going to be gone in a while because CI figured that out, and so did JR and Casa di Monte Cristo. I'm in a small community. I could get away with it. 30 miles away, there's a new CI, and another 30 miles from there's another CI. So, and they're fair with their prices. I don't think they're trying to, but they also put a lot of stores out in those areas. So, that's a manufacturer, is the name of the game to be a monopoly and to put everybody out of business and, have some off brands. As the acquisitions continue, are there going to be monopolies? We're already starting to see it a little bit. How often and how big can a company get in our industry before they, before the boom, Macanudo was 55% of the premium cigar sales in the United States with 3 SKUs. Look at it now. So where's it going to be and how's it going to play out?
Well, let me propose this
Major
question.
manufacturers have just been acquiring the larger boutique guys. I mean, look at Altadis and General Cigars in the past 12 years. Who have they acquired? Aging Room, Alec Bradley, cigar manufacturers that have graduated from craft to boutique to almost heritage type brands, but they're small enough that they can be acquired. But like Oliva is big enough where it can't be acquired. LaFleur is big enough where it can't be acquired. But Alec Bradley was small enough that it could have been acquired.
I think anyone can be acquired.
By Cortez.
Anyone
I think Davidoff can be acquired. I think Davidoff can be acquired. I think a lot of these big boys being surprised. I think there's a for sale sign on more than you know.
100%.
If the price is right, especially in today's environment, and a lot of these families, where they're at in their career and where their children are at in the career, the right price comes along. This is a perfect time to sell. I saw the same storm, like you
100%.
mentioned, years back. So
I mean,
I
rumor
think we're in for a wave of that.
years ago, right? Alec Bradley sold that same time frame too.
Sure, and two of us worked there, and we saw the growth of that company, and valuation, whatever. They saw value in that company, and if they see another value, there's going to be more of those. It's not going to stop. As this
Just
industry
business.
progresses.
That's just business. That's
Yeah,
That's business
absolutely.
101. Most business owners, myself, want to grow a company and exit the door at the
I
prime
mean,
time.
I was told I was told by a friend of mine who's one of the business managers I work with, directors, that he says, Jim, the only reason you start a business is to sell the
Sell
business.
it. Amen.
You
Best
build it,
Save your
you
lives
sell
as
it.
a brand
And
owner.
if you
You
know how,
start it and you sell it.
and it doesn't matter what business, because a real businessman, it doesn't matter what the product is. They
You
can
got it.
build a team, they can build a product, they can build this up, they sell the business, and they can move from selling ice cream to selling cigars to selling whiskey. It doesn't matter. They can just build a team and then just build it up, build pizzazz, and then get out of it at the peak. And that's what
Sure.
smart businessmen do. And I
If
know
you're a business owner and you don't have an exit strategy, you're an idiot.
You shouldn't be in
exactly.
business if you don't have an exit strategy.
Yep.
Correct.
So let's
100%.
we're getting we're continuing to move on. So let's get to this to the real topic of the day, right? Which we started with which is price inflation of cigars. And we're just let me go around the panel now, okay? Kind of in a little bit of a closeout. Do we have inflationary pricing on cigars that are out of control? Do we have inflationary prices that are fair and expected? Where do you feel we are right now in the industry as far as pricing on cigars? And I'll start with we'll start with Jonathon.
I think we're at a point where a lot of cigar brand and cigar makers are trying to hide behind those things. I think they're seeing the opportunities that, everybody's racing to the top. Okay, my brand, our positioning wasn't exactly this, but hell, everybody else is doing it. Oh, there's a tariff, there's a tax. Screw it. I'm taking my $10 cigar and I'm making it 15 overnight. That's what I think.
Risty.
Oh man, I just think it's become a joke. I mean, very beginning of the show, when's the last time, except for this year, you've seen 2 price increases before the PCA? It's standard TPE price increase, PCA price increase. You got a third one, tariff. Everyone's tariff. You're telling me a brand, some of these large guys, it don't cost more than 15 cents to make a fucking cigar. And you add in a 51 cents S chip, and now what? I forgot who said it. You're $1.17 landed. So let's just say tariffs go up 10%, and you can't eat 10 cents because you have a $15 cigar already. I baked in my prices for 10 years, and I could have raised them. I came close to raising them when everyone should have really raised them during the time of COVID, when logistics. I remember in February, I stopped importing cigars because going into March, the gas prices were so high. It was equivalent of importing 50,000 cigars based on weight, and you're really doing 15, 20,000. So that's a real price increase. But for someone to, like Jonathan said, hey man, fuck it. If I can take a 10 to 15 and go buy another Rolex next week, fuck it. Why not? Everyone else is doing it. I don't do that. I lowered all my prices. I left all cigar stores. I just like making a really good cigar that anyone can smoke my cigars and not complain about the prices. You know what I'm saying? I get it. I was at that one time too. Like, you know what? Can I raise the prices? Yeah. Should I? No. And every time someone did a price increase, the emails I got, hey, when are your prices going up? They're not. And that helped me because my orders doubled, tripled, quadrupled. You know what I'm saying? I stay in my lane. I don't need an elaborate life. You know what I'm saying? I do well in other factors in my life. Cigars, the difference for me going into the cigar business, was I didn't need that money. I just really love cigars. I really love talking to people. I love traveling. If I just felt bad, I walk in a cigar shop and my crawler at that point was $18 plus tax. Let's say it's Minnesota at the time. It's a 97% increase in sales tax on tobacco at that point. And this guy, all he can afford is my toothpick, $6,
So,
plus change. So everyone kept saying to me, take your 20 account, make it 10, drop the price down a little bit. I just said, fuck it. All my cigars are the same price across the board. I make different margins at each one's. I still comfortably, but the biggest thing with me was I got rid of boxes. And then so everyone automatically, because we're trained, boxes are ornate. Boxes, the premium, So right off the bat, people were like, oh, his shitty blends are coming out. He killed his own brand, blah, 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 blah. I make the exact same cigars I did for the past 10 years, and I just choose to sell them at what I sell them. And what did Davidoff release? What, yesterday? Was it today? They're down 10 million in import, something like that. My
Yeah.
imports are the highest they've ever been.
there you go.
I'm selling cigars. So there are cigar stores who are buying my cigars and still selling them because they know they can sell a $6 cigar, a premium cigar, and buy it for $3 and still double your money.
Right, they're buying them off page and selling them.
Yeah, I mean, there's online retailers are bought toothpicks, 5-pack for $17 shipped to your door. They're selling for $22.50. So that's the difference from a lot of people. A lot of people don't need to make 100% to make money. If you don't understand business, you will never understand how to make money at 10%, 15%, 30%. I came in the industry wholesale. My margin was 33%. Now you got a sales guy. Boom, I paid 15% on invoice. Now you got some retailers that won't even touch you unless you're 15%. What do? I'm left at 2% profit, right? But people are still buying me cigars. I will take my 2% because money is money. Never leave it on the table, right? I learned how to make money from 2% to 30%. You go into the really big online stores, they won't touch you unless you're 30% wholesale. So I can't go there. You know what I'm saying? I have a sales guy. It's just import. Numbers go up and down. So like for me, what it was I was just tired of dealing with the stores that 100% plus Keystone. And then they're like, well, why are you selling to this guy down the street? Because he has it for like $2 cheaper. And the story is I sell at the exact same price to you as to him. He just chooses to make that money at 30 or 40%. You were pricing yourself out of business. So this is the era of the great cigar consolidation of brands. The ones that don't understand it will either get absorbed for pennies on a dollar, or you're going to sell the last of what you have in a warehouse right into the sunset. It's either you adapt or get out. And
all right. So, Enid, what is your thought?
Basically, I feel as though that people are taking advantage of the tariffs. I really do feel this way. Because all of these cigar brands that are sitting up, and I'm not talking about the big box brands, I'm talking about the little brands that are sitting up and they're saying their prices are going up because of tariffs. They're using that as an excuse to increase the prices on their cigars, which I had made the executive decision that we would not do that. Even though we did switch to Rodriguez cigars, they're now manufacturing our cigars. We're not affected by the tariffs. So it's like, why sit up and tell people or release a statement and say, okay, we're going up on the cigars because of the tariffs? It's crazy to me. I know for me, I am basically aiming my sales at the blue collar workers. Now, if the vice presidents and all of that companies buy my cigars, that's fine with me. I really don't care. Because I consider myself the blue collar worker, even though I am retired from the military and everything like that. So, as like let's piggyback too about the retailers. Now, some instances the retailers don't know how to move the product, and they need to sit down and they need to talk to these brand owners, especially the small brand owners, find out the story, ask them questions in terms of moving the product and everything like that. I also believe that, at some point in time, like the guy was saying before, that some of these brands are going to get absorbed if they don't sit up and they don't really come up with a formula and really budget their money. They're not going to be around any longer. So that's how I feel.
Thank you. Frankie.
Um, I think it honestly boils down to what Enid said, that a lot of manufacturers are hiding behind the tariffs. I also think a lot of manufacturers are just plain out freaking greedy. And, a cigar that literally costs them, like Risty said, $3, and they're trying to wholesale it for 7, you know, to make a ton of profit, which puts them in a 15, 20, because that's where they want to be. Manufacturers like Plasencia. Plasencia is the top 1% of tobacco grower. They didn't have a brand for how many decades?
That's true.
Yeah.
And they were making cigars for Rocky, for other people, for all those guys. And what was Rocky wholesaling their cigar price at? $4. I mean, didn't he get that's who took Rocky in the beginning when he was blackballed from the industry, was the Plasencias, correct? His story, when he was selling shit out of the back of his trunk of his car. And even then, his cigar, when Plasencia came to market at a $15 to $20 retail cost, Rocky cigars still made at Plasencia were $7, $8 at the time retail cost. So it goes back to a manufacturer's ego of what they think their cigars could be worth. And it goes to that. Now you look at another manufacturer. I have his price sheet right here because I'm doing an order for him. Hochi from La Galera Cigars. He is the largest privately held manufacturer of cigars in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
His most expensive cigar in his core lines retail at $12 in the state of Arizona. And his prices are Keystone Plus suggested MSRP. He keeps his costs low. And Hochi is known as the banker in the Dominican Republic.
And that's why Hochi ain't going anywhere.
That's why he ain't going
anywhere. Exactly.
It's like what Risty said. He can work on a 5%, 10% margin, make that money, don't leave it on the table, and pass it down to the retailer who he knows is his bread and butter, and put out a cigar. And Hochi has been in business since 1936. When did La Galera come to market actually as a brand? 7 years ago?
Yeah, 2018,
so similar story like Plasencia minus the ego.
There you go.
So that's
those are guys.
Jake, hold on, we're gonna go around the panel. Hold on, we're gonna go around the panel. You guys can chime in a second. Jake, what is your view on this?
No, I couldn't agree more with what everybody said. I think it's a travesty, right? I think the big name brands, they're hiding behind the tariffs. And I remember when it first came out, my partner Jonathon and I, we talked about it, and that was one thing we stood fast on. We said, listen, we're not going to pass that cost to consumer, and we're just a small company, but again, you just eat that cost, you keep the price down. And really the tariffs didn't affect us like it probably did a lot of other folks, because we own the entire process from seed to smoke, and we're more worried about quality than we are quantity anyway. So it's really about earning that consumer and earning that business. And we wanted to make sure we still continued, that tradition on the handshake deals and getting to know our consumers and everything. So it's one of those things, we're going to keep the price point the same. We want to keep the price down low enough because I'm a firm believer, you don't just smoke a cigar, you enjoy a cigar. And it's about enjoying that moment with other people and taking that time for yourself and relaxing. So it's one of those things that we're certainly not going to let that impact our business. We're in it for the long haul and just, the same as what everybody said here, you can't let those things affect the bottom line. For us, we have a good product. We want to get it out there. We want to support the brick and mortar guys and everybody else. And we're not going to give into that. So we're not going to give into that temptation. I just appreciate the conversation. It was a great topic tonight, Boston Jimmie, and well done.
Okay, David, you're up.
Jimmie, this week alone, I had a 10-2, a 5, a 6-1, and a 4-1, and I think that sums it all up. I guess that's all I could say. The math says itself. If you're getting those kind of deals, then what was the purpose of the price increases? Could we have kept 2 price increases down this year and run with what we had at a diminishing rate of return, or should we raise our prices and just completely put a noose around it quickly? So that's where I think it's at. It's a little bit of excitement when you're making a lot of money and a hit of a boom. So you get a little greedy, I guess. And maybe now when you pull back the reins and see what's really going on, there'll be some wake up calls. But I think greed.
Yep. And I would say, I think we, as an industry, we need to pay attention to what the level of imports are coming in. I think that's a telling story. Now, that might, like I said earlier, that just might be a 2-month clip and maybe things ramp up. But I think it's important to see that because the trend is down, it's not up. All right. And if it goes down again, I think everybody's got to recognize that, hey, it's, we said earlier, you can, you want to sell $20, $30 cigars, and the guy who's drinking, that's drinking like Johnny Blue and stuff, he doesn't care. Okay. He's got more money. It doesn't matter. He goes into a shop and he's buying a $50 or $100 pinch of freaking whiskey. It doesn't matter to him that he's spending that for a cigar. But this industry has grown and been built over the last 20 to 30 years by everyday Americans, hardworking Americans that want to sit back, enjoy a cigar. They don't want a crappy cigar. They want to enjoy. But I have plenty of $8 cigars. You can look at my reviews. There are some reviews I put out which are stellar reviews on cigars that are nowhere near $25 ever, right? And you can challenge me all you want on those reviews, but I'll tell you what, you got to pay attention to those things and say, yep, that's where you're at. So pay attention to the people that are actually feeding this industry. And if you start to price them out and they don't have where to go, you're going to lose money. So let's get this thing re-energized in the right way. But if you want to sell a cigar for that price, that's fine. I don't care. That's your business. We'll see how the business goes across the board. That's my view. With that, that's the show. Basically, I'll just go around real fast. Anybody's got any last words? We'll start with Dave. We'll go reverse. We'll go to Dave. Any last comments?
I just, it's a hard subject, Jimmie. I appreciate you bringing it up, and it's something real. And I know it may offend some people in the industry because we're touching on some things that, again, we go to ego. But, I've been in this business for more than half my life, and I love the art form, but I think sometimes it's taking over a little bit too much. And get back to the basics to just a great cigar. Aristi's got a really good model. And, it's about having a good value and being able to enjoy it when you want to, not when you hope to. So I hope they figure it out.
Okay, go back to Jake.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, Risty. I love your business model, and certainly enjoyed the conversation tonight. Yeah, no, it's all good. I really enjoyed the conversation, the round the table discussion. I agree. Some people may get offended by it, but again, getting back to their roots. And Jimmie, we got a new Madre cigar coming out this summer, so I'm gonna steal that edge business from you, buddy. I got you. I got you covered, man. We'll keep that price point down. So I'll have you try it. But thanks a lot, everybody. Pleasure meeting everyone, and continue to do good things and keep fighting the good fight, guys.
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, this was a really great topic. I think it's going to provide a lot of information to the consumers, knowing that the economics of the cigar, not pass down. But yeah, we did touch on a really sensitive subject that some manufacturers aren't going to really like. And, hats off to Aristi. He's in that realm of the Hochi Blancos and other manufacturers who remember their humble beginnings. And that's why their ego and their greed isn't part of their business. And that's not what drives them. Yes, we all want to provide for our families and future generations of our family, but taking that aspect out to know what you need of where you're at, not where you want to go. We are probably going to ruffle some feathers from some manufacturers for this, but honestly, truth hurts.
I've ruffled a few feathers in my 12 years, so I'm okay with that. We're going to go to Jonathon.
So I'm a capitalist and I'm a marketer. So it kind of goes a little bit against what we were just talking about, but it doesn't. While everybody else is going up, everybody's going to be swimming in this luxury pool over
Yeah.
here. You boutique folks here, that is opportunity. Grab that business. You know where you need to be. You can outgrow these people. As long as you stay true to your mission statement, you'll kill it. Because a lot of these guys either don't have a mission statement or they forgot what their mission statement was. So there's a lot of opportunity. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I'm not going to be negative. You know, these guys do whatever they want to do. Anybody who wants to be in this business, anybody who knows business, now is the time to get in because there's an entire portfolio of people who are being underserved.
Thank
Well
you.
said, Jonathan.
Enid.
Well, say for last. First of all, thank you for the invite. I really enjoyed this conversation. It is gonna, you all are saying ruffle some feathers. It's gonna piss these people off when they hear this and their teams. Um, so and listen to it. Like all of the others said, I focus in on the blue collar workers. And I'm just about building my business and probably in 10 years selling it off and keep it moving and go on to something else. So thank you guys for all of the insights, the advice. Hopefully I'll see some of you all soon. Um, Everybody have a good night.
Okay. And Risty, you closing it out.
Oh, great. Pressure on me. Listen, every brand can do what I did. Every single one of them. But the difference is I swallowed that hard pill because I did branding. I'm a royal brand, ornate, this and that. Every brand can do what I did. Just stay true to your customer. It got to the point where I was losing customers because quality does drop. I decided to leave, went for somewhere else where I can lower my costs drastically. My prices are even cheaper overseas. My overseas has catapulted like insane. I left the US. I let one company run the US for me as far as sales. You know, I decided the number 3 sales guy in online marketing to take over my company as far as sales. I took $10 cigars and they're $3. I mean, a lot of people that's hard to explain to them because they're used to paying my cigars. You know, I paid $12 for this tyrannical buck. It's Jimmie, you bought what 3 5-packs, and what did that
Four,
equate to?
4
Like
or 5 pack. I
4
bought
5-packs.
it
You bought a
effective of a
box
box.
for like you bought a box, and if you went to the store, you got 3 boxes for the price of one. You
Yeah.
know, so every brand can do this, especially the large ones. The boutique ones, like Jonathon said, Jonathon puts out some really great information. I do comment on it because I just love insight that he provides, and a lot of people should read it. You should take him up on that offer. Is you guys are here, you can compete with these guys up here because these guys up here set the model. They're not going to change it. Ruffling feathers, that is like my number one thing I do. I'm probably the most hated guy in this fucking industry, but I'm true to myself. I go to sleep at night, no issues. And if anyone ever needs help, contact Jonathon. If you need someone to help you make your cigars, I've had brands literally call me and say, how can you sell that cigar for $3 when it costs me more than $3 landed at my house? My dad is actually smoking your cigars versus my own brand now because it's cheaper for him. Cater, just cater to the customer. You know, my very first online cigar purchase that really made me realize the pricing were Nestor Miranda Lanceros. Paid $198 for a box. I went online and I found out I can buy them for $70 a box. Why? And there are brands, I don't know what I missed before, and I will ruffle some feathers right now. There are brands that are $17, $18 that do sell to these catalog or mailers because they have, a $59 5-pack, $49 5-pack shipped to the door. They can't spend more than $3.75, $3 a stick. Still make the margin factor in the shipping. There are brands that sell cigars for $18, $19. I know for a fact that sell to these stores for like $3, $2.50. How do you get blowout deals for $1.50 a stick? That store is still making money. The store's not in it to lose money. So I don't know. Like the industry will get consolidated of the brands that do not understand the model. Everyone that comes into this industry, me myself, was told, you make your cigar, you import it, you get it to the warehouse. You get it to the warehouse, they're going to charge you 25 cents to 50 cents a stick just to house it and ship it for you. Then you get your sales guys, you get your brokers, and I'm working with a 32% margin. So now I'm at like what, 22% out the door. I learned how to make money at 22%. I came out right away. Someone told me, he's like, the cigars are too cheap. You should increase them by $2, $3. My respectful, rebuttal to that was, uh, I'm self-funded. I have no one else in here. You can't tell me what to do in my business. If I choose to sell my shit at this price, it is what it is. But for me, the problem is right now is everyone thinks I'm selling old inventory or dead inventory or cheaper blends. My $3 cigar is the same tobacco that another brand sells for $18 on the shelf. So I put that out there. I want people to rethink their cigar purchase. And I have nothing against anyone on this panel. You're doing your business. People are listening. Do your thing. I just chose to do my thing the way I'm doing it. And if I pissed off a few people, so be it. I'll be here tomorrow.
All right. Thank you, Risty. Okay, so that's our show. We're taking it to the nub. By the way, 2 hours, Amazon Basin, down to the nub. 2 hours on this. And by the way, this is not really a super expensive cigar. So anyway, with that, I want to thank thank the sponsors for sponsoring the show. As always, it's a little harder to do without that.